Well, thank you, Ruben. And I'm not sure that an Essex UK accent is one of the most beautiful in the world, but maybe it wasn't me he was talking about. So yeah, I'm John Thompson. I'm Virtasant's CTO. At Virtasant, we're a cloud services company. We've been a premier member of the FinOps Foundation since the very early days. And over the years, we've worked with all kinds of different organizations, billions of dollars of cloud spend, and seeing kind of what it takes to actually drive results. And so we'll share some of that today. And I'm pleased to be speaking with Teo.
So I'm Teo, Oseni-Alexis, and I'm actually lead technical program manager at Tesco, where I set up their FinOps practice, and I'm on secondment to dunnhumby to do the same as FinOps manager there.
Great. So yeah, we'll talk about four main themes today, really all around how do you drive results? And you'll see one overriding thing across all of them really is context. It's understanding your business, understanding your teams. So we'll talk a bit about leadership support and the night and day difference that can make to getting things to happen. We'll talk about visibility, and not just here's a whole load of numbers, but how you tailor that and make that very relevant to your different audiences. We'll talk about a topic very dear to my heart. I'm fundamentally an engineer, so yeah, engaging the engineers where they are, getting into their world, understanding them. And finally, how do we make it easy? Kind of, we all want to do that. And we're lucky enough to have worked with Teo twice now, both at Tesco, where she drove some amazing results, and now at dunnhumby, where it's kind of earlier days. And I think because of that, she is able to bring some great stories and also kind of compare and contrast, because this isn't one size fits all. So Teo also will be able to tell us about what worked at Tesco, but then how that's been a bit different at dunnhumby, which I think it gives us a great perspective. Yeah. So leadership support now kind of seems like a no-brainer. I mean, you go to a leader and you say, do you think we should save money? I mean, who's going to say no? But it's a bit more nuanced than that. To actually achieve results, it's, well, how do you harness that support? How do you focus it? I know, Teo, there was a particular time with Tesco where there was a focus on kind of hitting end-of-year targets, and suddenly leadership support swung into action, and it really was a big difference. If you can maybe tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so at Tesco, of course, Tesco is a retailer, and we start Christmas in July. So one thing you don't want to mess up is Christmas, biggest trading period. So we always have Christmas starts at July, and we've got hard freeze from October into January. So when you talk about FinOps and all the remediations that we need the engineers to do, you've got some teams that are great at doing some of those remediations, and then you've got some teams that are, please don't bother me, because I'm busy focusing on peak trading. Now, one particular year, we had such an aggressive target to meet. It looked like we weren't going to meet it. We were talking to our partners, and we had to then escalate that to the execs to say, we're not going to meet our target. We're going to be way over what our forecast is. So they took the decision, our global engineering directors took the decision to have one day every week for a time box period of time where every single engineer focused on all the optimization, all the cost optimization remediations that they had to do. And they chose one particular day, I think it was a Friday, where all teams were available to work in collaboration to do this work. Needless to say, we smashed it like massively. What that then meant was that it focused the engineers on, actually, this is a really important practice that we need to start to bake into. But it also focused our execs on, we need to create a bit more support. It also meant it opened the door for them to then start to question and challenge where they were not seeing that support. When we were sending those reports out and they were seeing gaps, they were then questioning the directors to challenge them on what's actually going on with your team. So that created a momentum, and also created a drive that, we were open to do these things a little bit more, and people started to embrace it. That really turned the corner for us in terms of our FinOps practice and how we engaged with our technology business.
And I think there's great ideas in there that I think can apply to a lot of businesses. If you're finding it's kind of hard to get traction, even if it's get an agreement for half a day, 1 week where everybody's going to focus. It just gets everybody thinking about it, gets some things to happen, gets people used to the idea of measuring, well, what did we achieve in that half day? And you open a conversation about measuring FinOps and things. So, I'd encourage everyone to look for those kind of opportunities in your organisation. And Teo, obviously that was Tesco. You're kind of now starting again with dunnhumby. How's it the same? How's it different?
So the difference is that when we started our journey in Tesco, we were just getting into cloud, so we were all kind of learning. So the learning curve was a bit steeper. Where we are at in dunnhumby is that we've got a CTO and global director who have done it before. So they're very opinionated about in terms of how we do it. So we've got baked in support. Now the journey is different in that we've now got to bring in everybody else on that journey and sort of create a new way of working and understanding the context that we're at in dunnhumby. And that's the work that I'm doing at the moment.
Great. So let's move on to our second topic, providing visibility. This is more than just, here's what you're spending. Obviously, all types of visibility, where could you be making changes? And a key part as well is tailoring that to the different types of user within the business. And I know, Teo, within Tesco, we kind of worked with you a lot to come up with dashboards that really worked for different teams and different people. Can you maybe tell us a bit about that?
So when we first started to do this, we thought it was enough to just have this data set that we just pushed in front of all the engineers and said, like, here's the data, knock yourself out. What we got was blank faces. What on earth are you talking about? I don't have time to decipher all of this. Where we got to was we turned it around and we created a show back specifically for each team with a little bit of their own peculiarities in there. What we do with them every month is that we also then produce a top 3. This is a game changer for your team if you do these remediations action point. So it's really focused. We're not trying to blind them with anything. So that's what we're doing with the visibility for our engineering teams. What we're finding is that people are so much more responsive, and we can have a really in-depth conversation about whether those 3 things are possible and why not, and really gaining a bit more context because we're showing them, this is your budget, this is the implications if you don't do these things, this is where the miss will be, and we're having a richer conversation around why it's important for you to take action rather than sort of shoving things at them and then expecting them to be able to interpret it. In turn, they are then meeting us where we need to be and we're doing this journey together. But when I talk about visibility also for both Tesco and dunnhumby, it's also about visibility to our CFO and to our CTO around all the unit economic metrics that they want to see. And it's very, very important because they will then be our biggest advocate. They can then challenge various things for us and also create a seat at the table so that we are part of all of the conversations, which we didn't used to be. Like Tesco, we're now sitting as part of that conversation. So when there's new things being built, they're thinking a bit more about, okay, what's the implications for our overall cost, and not just we're building this new application for a client, but not thinking about the impact. So creating that visibility also allows us as a FinOps practice to be visible in all of the areas that we need to be at.
And you mentioned to me that dunnhumby, when you sort of came in, the starting point was, well, people have got data, and there was this humongous spreadsheet that kind of, it might be buried in there if you tried to find it, but basically nobody could use it. And it was kind of, as you started to tame it, you suddenly found people engaged because they could get the information they needed.
Yeah, it's also, the spreadsheets was a no-no. I mean, we do work quite a bit with spreadsheets, but what we tried to then do is push the information to them where they were at. So we brought that information to them in their ticketing system, in their DevOps environment where they were at, so that they could see these things. We were trying to make it second nature to them. So we were removing all of that friction that meant that they could sort of do something about it rather than go looking for it. So then that was also then rewarding us back with how things were being remediated, and then how we were managing our cost.
And that takes us nicely on to the next topic, meeting engineers where they are. So I mean, I'm an engineer by background. I kind of, get that there are a lot of different challenges, pressures facing engineers. They don't really need yet another thing to have to do, yet another tool to go into. And as you mentioned that time, and one thing we worked with you at Tesco on is, how do we get the information? And more than the information, it was actually talked about on the panel at the end of the keynote, how do you get the insights, the useful stuff, not just a data dump, to people in the place they're working? And I know we worked with you on sort of the ticketing systems and the developer portal and so on.
And also, I mean, as well as using all of the ticketing system, meeting where they are at, I definitely do a walk around every single week with our engineering teams, talking to them about what's going on with them, really understanding the context, what challenges they're facing, what they're building, what's coming up. Because you have to understand your infrastructure landscape. You have to understand what's going on with them. You have to understand why they're not doing the remediations that they need to be doing. That's really important, because actually if you meet them where they are at, you understand what the context that's going on with them. You might be able to remove some of those blockers, but then it also builds the relationship and stops the friction that you might be getting in the pushback in terms of some of the remediations that you might think it's really easy, but they don't necessarily think so. So that's the kind of thing that we have baked in. We also have people like our partners that are extension of our teams. We have them come and talk to our engineers. That they'll do all sorts of fandangled things with them, like they might even write a piece of code because somebody's saying, I can't do this because I don't have the bandwidth, but here's one we prepared for you earlier to just make a much more smoother execution of our FinOps practice.
Yeah, I think that the more you can do that, the more you can get out there and understand the engineers, walk a mile in their shoes, understand the pressures facing them. They're making rational decisions based on the pressures they've got. The more you understand that and can kind of tailor your approach, the better. And I know, Toe, when we were sort of preparing for this, we talked about how different teams, different application teams, kind of almost have different personalities, and you need to slightly tailor your style to work with them rather than trying to change them. And what were the kind of the three main characterizations we had?
So our caricatures, we've got the slow and steady who consistently, they're like your best child. They'll follow the rules. They are putting FinOps remediations in every sprint, and they're getting it done and doing things along, and they're forward thinking. They're always like, what's next? What can we do? They're always sort of coming up to you. You've got the people that do it in chunks, so they'll do chunks at a time, and then we've got the last minute .commers that literally wait till hard freeze is done. They'll do it sort of in hard freeze and wait for code release in January to meet that budget, and you're literally biting your fingernails thinking, oh my gosh, are we going to make this budget? Are they going to make it? And they do, but they will do it at the last bit. And again, it's understanding why they're doing that, and not necessarily being so hard on some of those teams that are not the slow and steady, the ones that don't turn you grey. So it's really understanding the context of what's going on with them and why, really, and just working with them on that.
Yeah, and you can try and advise and encourage, but if you try to bite off completely changing a team's culture and how it works, you're making your life so much harder. So
even within the same squads, right?
Yeah,
different squads in the same directorate have way different behaviours, and it's really sort of understanding that, working with them, really meeting them where they are.
Yeah, in your experience, what do you do when a team just isn't doing anything? They've got loads of things they could be optimizing, costs are out of control, but they're just not doing anything.
Yeah, there are a few of those. And if effectively, my first position is, to sit down and have a conversation. What's really the issue here? What are we talking about? What can I do? What's within our gifting to resolve? Sometimes that doesn't work. And then it's just to escalate it to the next level and say, look, we've got this challenge. You are in danger of X, Y, and Z. So what is it that you want to do about it? Is there something that I'm missing that we don't have a view about? This is the impact strategically. What can we do? If we don't resolve it, then we escalate it so that we can have a conversation about it. There could be something that maybe we're not privy to that needs to be exposed, and that's what we're trying to find out. And sometimes it's just, we're building something for our clients. So our focus is on that. We're not doing anything else, but it's also getting them to understand that you're building this thing for your client, but actually here's the implications for the business as a result, because this is part of the whole unit economics and how we do our chargebacks and etc. So it's really sort of tying that up, and sometimes it's just that they don't necessarily understand the flow through, and this is again why you have to understand the full context of what you're working with and what's going on for people, so that we can remove that friction, because we're all trying to get to the same point together, really.
Yeah, and that's again where understanding the context comes in, rather than it just being an escalation of, oh, these guys aren't doing anything. You could go with a much better explanation of, well, they're really focused on this next release, but if we're going to hit the budget, we really need to be doing this. So how can we work this in somehow? Is there a way we can you can have a much better escalation and a much better conversation?
Massively relational, how we do it. So, my team, we really pride ourselves on really going out, talking to everybody around how they do it. And what you find actually, which I'm really proud of, is that they become your mouthpiece. They're the ones that are escalating things and talking to other teams around what you're doing and how well that you're doing it, and the things that they're doing, starts to get feedback into sort of your execs, and they're saying, I'll give you an example. Recently, we had a new building opened in India, and I'd been doing all this work with all of the teams, and they were out on an exec evening out, and people were saying, that FinOps practice, they've been talking to us, they've been doing this, they've given us this, they've done this reporting, and our CFO contacted our CTO and said, why don't I want a dashboard like that? Why are they getting a dashboard? I'm not seeing all of these things that they're talking about, because these people were then doing our marketing for us and saying, they were saying, look, they are really helping us to move our business forward. So that's the kind of gains that you want, that, we all bring it together.
Great. And so to move on to our final topic, make it easy. And I mean, like most things, FinOps, the easier you make it for people to take action, the more likely they are to do that. Yeah. So Taylor, what kind of things have you seen that have worked? How have you made it easier for people to do things?
Yeah, so again, it's, if we need to write code for you for something, we will do it. If we need to unblock any friction for you, we will do it. It's going to understand what's going on for you, making sure that, we've got full context about where we're at, what we're trying to achieve, really making sure that you understand the journey that we're on and how we're, all of us together, are trying to take you on that journey. Just really removing any challenges that you might have and escalating it. Sometimes it's a resource challenge for you, and maybe you're having a conversation in your own department, but it's not escalating for you, and we can do that. We can make that a bit more visible, so that we can move some of those blockers to allow you to do the things that you need.
And also, you mentioned earlier around providing teams with tailored, here are the 3 things you should do. And one of my bugbears is, often people will just say, oh, well, I've got this tool and here's 10,000 recommendations that are generic with no context of your team or your world. That you should go do these 10,000, and the team are just, what am I going to do with this? So yeah, make it easy for them. Figure out, given this context you've understood, what are the things they should focus on? Give them a small number of things to do.
Yeah, we give them 3 key things that we're seeing that's going to move the dial the most if you do these 3 key things, and this is how. And we'll literally spoon feed them. This is how you can do it, you know, and then they'll tell us, well, we can do this or we can't do this or whatever it might be. And then we'll work together to move that forward. We also do things like we will send an email to say, you know, to the whole of tech to say, you know, absolutely well done to Team X because you've been phenomenal, you've done this, you've done that, etc. And that also encourages people to want to do better. I do think generally people want to do the best that they can, but other things get in the way, and it's just making sure that you're also on their list of priorities. That's also a key one to helping them.
Great. So Teo and I are here for the whole conference. So, I mean, drop by the Virtasant stand out in the expo. Yeah. Happy to sort of talk to anyone about our experiences, ideas, and hear your ideas as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. For more FinOps X 2025 content, go check out our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and leave comments and questions for all of our wonderful speakers. We appreciate your support.